Today we're starting a brand new series called Christmas with the Family. And around the holidays, we often have expectations for what our family time will be like. And we do this all year, of course, but especially around all the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, we have an idea of, this kind of fantastical, ideal holiday experience with families where everybody has the warm fuzzies and it's just the most magical, enchanting time possible. Do you know what I'm talking about? And that only exists in a Hallmark card. That's not quite real, but we have that idea in our minds that every family is perfect around the holidays and we're going to have warm family time together. And of course we do. Hopefully you do have warm family time. But for some of us, the holidays highlight the difficulties that we face in our families. For some of us, it also highlights grief that we feel, for maybe the loss of a family member. How many of you know the holidays are tough for some folks? You know that? I mean, it can be a really challenging time. When everybody else is cheerful, some people are really hurting. And so around the holidays especially, we often have these expectations for who our family members will be. And I want to acknowledge that this graphic here, this family, is really a minority family in the United States. There are lots of different kinds of families. Of course, there are ethnically different families from what we see in this picture, but 50% of all the adults in America are single. Did you know that? Full half of all adults in America are not married, either never married or divorced, and so they're not really represented by this graphic. Of course, some people who are single or couples don't have children and they would like to. They struggle with infertility, like about 15% of Americans, and they're not really represented here. Of course, we have same-sex couples in our church and in society, and they're not really represented here. So I just want to acknowledge that. We like this picture because it's just kind of funny. The awkward sweaters and the kids, the parents are all happy, but the kids not so much. But this picture doesn't necessarily represent every family in our society, and we want to make sure that everybody knows you're included. If you're single, if you don't have children, you might think, well, this series isn't for me because I don't have a family. Well, you do, actually. You have your extended family. You have your friends. Now, for a lot of, this was true of me before I was married, that my friends, were just every bit as close to me as my family members were. And so you have family in that sense, and you also have a church family. And so this series is absolutely for you. We want everybody to be included in this series. Those who have children, try to raise them right. Where I grew up, Ohio State football is a religion. Of course, the game yesterday was Ohio State versus Michigan, which is the rivalry. People who are Ohio State fans are obsessed with this game. Just to give you an idea of how deep this goes, there were babies born this weekend at the Ohio State University Hospital, and the hospital wrapped them in these blankets. If you can see them, they say "Beat Michigan." So they're doing their best to raise their children in the Ohio State tradition. But we want to make the point, this series is for everyone. And the title of the sermon today is No Perfect Families Allowed. One of our values in One Church is no perfect people allowed. And what we mean by that is there are a lot of churches that kind of pressure people to pretend that they have it all together, that they're super Christians, that their families have no dysfunction, they don't struggle, they never argue on the way to church on a Sunday morning, right? And the churches pressure them to pretend that they're some kind of super Christians. We don't want to do that. And the reason for that is, it's a theological word called sanctification, which theologically means that God sets us aside, He sets us apart increasingly over time to be the kind of people He can trust, the kind of people He can live through. He can rely on us because over time we're growing in our character to be more like Jesus in our character. It's sanctification. But what that means for us is we don't have to pretend to be perfect because we're growing. You see what I mean? If you realize that the Christian life following Jesus is a process by which we grow to be more like Him, well, I don't have to pretend to be perfect and have it all together because, of course, I don't. Implied in the word sanctification is I don't have it all together. My family doesn't have it all together. Of course we're not perfect. No human being is. But I'm growing. Are you with me? So that's why around here we say no perfect people allowed. And so today we're talking about no perfect families allowed. Every family faces some level of dysfunction. Now, of course, there are circumstances where it's greater than usual. There's abuse in families. There are deep, dark secrets that are very, very painful. I want to acknowledge that today. And we're going to talk about resolving conflict and boundaries as the series goes on. But a lot of people think their family is just really, broken and bad, or they think maybe we're the only people that have this particular problem in our family. Maybe the family generally is great, but we have this particular problem in our family, and they might think they're the only ones. It's not true. Your family is normal. No perfect families allowed. Now, when it comes to having expectations for family members around the holidays, it's kind of hard, to be honest with you, even to give a sermon intro about it, because a lot of times we don't acknowledge that we have expectations for family members. So I promise you, maybe you're one of them, there are people sitting here right now thinking, Ryan, I don't know if I really struggle with this. I don't know if this series applies to me. Oh, well, we'll see. Because we don't necessarily like to admit that we have expectations for our loved ones. But everybody does. Everybody does. And there are usually at least two ways our expectations get revealed. The first is we realize that we feel frustration when we're around a certain person. This could be a spouse, could be an extended family member, could be a sibling, could be a child, could be a close friend of ours, but we can feel, if we're honest, we can feel the frustration when we're around that person for some reason. But we might feel guilty about it, and so we don't even want to admit it's there. But we still feel that frustration around that person. If we're honest about it, that's one way it gets revealed. The other way it gets revealed is that other person can feel your frustration. And this can go on for a long time secretly. You may not know. But the child or the parent or the spouse or the sibling can just kind of feel a sense around you that I just don't quite measure up. In some way, this person, something's just not quite right here. So you can feel the frustration, that's one way of knowing, but they can feel the frustration of whatever that issue is in the family. We can carry frustration because we're holding on to a standard for a spouse or a child or a sibling or a parent that they can't really meet. We have an expectation that they'll act a certain way in all these circumstances, but they're just not really capable of that. And over time, that frustration can grow in us, and that distance can grow. Sometimes we'll find ourselves talking about them when they're not around. Sometimes just, again, feeling so guilty we won't even really admit the frustration even to ourselves, but we feel it. We posted this photo on Facebook this week, and it got over 235 likes in 3 days. It's the next photo. This little girl, 235 likes in 3 days. It's by far the most effective thing we've ever done on social media. And I mean, it's cute, right? It's a cute little girl and giving a present, but the caption there, everyone you love is a gift. I don't think it got 235 likes just because she's cute. That's probably responsible for 150, at least. But I think the phrase, everyone you love is a gift, of course we all know that, right? It's not like a newsflash. Of course, of course, everybody I love in my life is a gift, but I think maybe why it got 235 likes in 3 days is because we know that's true, but we don't always feel like that. Maybe we shouldn't say amen too loudly to that, right? We don't always feel like that. And at the same time, we understand that we're busy. There are many things in life that distract us. We have work stress. We have the stress of life. And when we're around our loved ones, we don't always view them as a gift. We don't always treat them with the kind of love and tenderness that we want to treat them with, because of the busyness and the distractions of life. And so I think part of the reason it got so many likes is we want the reminder that, everybody in my life is a gift, and I want to treat them as a gift. I want to view them in that way. So during Christmas with the family, we're rereading the Christmas story. And we're looking at the first Holy Family, the Christmas family, Mary, Joseph, and Jesus, for what we can learn about our families. And we're going to start by reading a scripture that actually begins the Christmas story in the Gospel of Luke. It's about the birth of John the Baptist. It's going to be on the screen. It's Luke chapter 1, verses 5 through 25. I'll skip a couple of verses, but I'd like to read a little more than usual because it's a Christmas story. And it's just nice to read the Christmas story this time of year. So Luke 1, verse 5. In the time of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah who belonged to the priestly division of Abijah. His wife Elizabeth was also a descendant of Aaron. Both of them were righteous in the sight of God, observing all of the Lord's commands and decrees blamelessly. This does not mean they were perfect, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Verse 7, but they were childless because Elizabeth was not able to conceive, and they were both very old. In the ancient world, infertility was always blamed on the woman. Verse 8, once when Zechariah's division was on duty and he was serving as priest before God, he was chosen by lot, according to the custom of the priesthood, to go into the temple of the Lord and burn incense. And when the time for the burning of incense came, all the assembled worshipers were praying outside. Then an angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing at the right side of the altar of incense. When Zechariah saw him, he was startled and gripped with fear. But the angel said to him, do not be afraid, Zechariah. Your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you are to call him John. He will be a joy and delight to you, and many will rejoice because of his birth, for he will be great in the sight of the Lord. And then we'll skip to verse 18. Zechariah asked the angel, how can I be sure of this? You can hear the skepticism in his voice. How can I be sure of this? I am an old man, and my wife is well along in years. Verse 19, the angel said to him, I am Gabriel. I picture this kind of funny, like Gabriel's like, listen, bud, I'm Gabriel. Kind of a big deal. I'm bringing this message for a reason. He says, the angel said to him, I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I have been sent to speak to you and tell you this good news. And now you will be silent and not able to speak until the day this happens, because you did not believe my words, which will come true at their appointed time. He makes Zechariah mute. Verse 21, meanwhile, the people were waiting for Zechariah and wondering why he stayed so long in the temple. When he came out, he could not speak to them. They realized he had seen a vision in the temple, for he kept making signs to them, but remained unable to speak. When his time of service was completed, he returned home. After this, his wife Elizabeth became pregnant and for 5 months remained in seclusion. The Lord has done this for me, she said. In these days, he has shown his favor, his blessing, and taken away my disgrace among the people. Will you pray with me? Oh God. God, we calm our hearts on this first Sunday in Advent. We thank you that we have the privilege of gathering together with a community of people who want to worship you and in a place where our questions and doubts are welcome and we don't have to pretend to be perfect. And God, it's hard for us to think about some of these family issues because families are complicated. And it brings up a lot of emotion. Some of us think, my family's great. And we're not quite willing to see maybe some of the issues or willing to admit them. God, for those of us who are, I pray for your healing today. I pray for insights as we talk about what this family, Zechariah and Elizabeth and John, can teach us about our family. We thank you for what you're going to do today. In Jesus' name. And everybody said, amen. So first of all, this passage contains some thinking about infertility that comes out of the ancient world and that isn't really our understanding of infertility today. In the ancient world, people believed that God caused infertility and that God could take it away, and it was always a woman's fault. And so you see in the last line, Elizabeth says, he's taken my disgrace away. Well, 15% of Americans, like I said, struggle with infertility. Next week, I'm going to interview a couple who has struggled with that. And so we just want to acknowledge that we know what causes infertility now. And reading a passage like this can be painful for people who are struggling with that. I just want to acknowledge that God's not behind that. We know the medical reasons behind that now. Another thing, the passage says that Zechariah and Elizabeth followed the ways of the Lord blamelessly. That doesn't mean they were perfect, flawless people. If you miss that, it'll ruin my entire sermon, right? That's the point I'm trying to make, that they weren't. This is a Hebrew idiom that just means they're good, decent people. Good people. They followed God's law. They were observant Jews. These are decent, upright people. That's what it means. It doesn't mean that they were flawless or perfect. No human being is sinless. There is no such thing as sinless perfection in this life. So no perfect family is allowed. And we see that in Zechariah's behavior. He's made mute by the angel Gabriel because he doubts. Gabriel's like, seriously, man, I flew a long way to talk to you. And you're a priest. So the priest missed what God was doing. God's doing a powerful thing, and the priest, the guy who's supposed to see that, misses that. So it's a big deal. He makes a mistake here. And there are consequences for that. He's not able to speak until the 8th day after John is born, and we read about that in verse 64. But Zechariah is one of the many priests who served in rotation in the temple. The priests were grouped into 24 divisions, and they served in the temple twice a year. The honor of burning incense in the Holy of Holies that Zechariah is awarded here, it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. So he's looked forward to this his entire life. He's waited for this moment. And then he has this experience in the temple that we read about in Isaiah, the mountain of the Lord, the temple, that is something that's out of the blue. It happens suddenly. He doesn't expect it. And then he walks out, and he's supposed to bless the people, and he can't talk. Bummer. That's embarrassing. That's awkward, right? And so they see him waving his arms, and he can't talk. So they know something powerful has happened, but he's not even able to do his job as a priest because God has broken in. Really quickly, this is the way that Luke opens his gospel. And for us, especially in this church, it's important to realize this. Luke opens his gospel with a story about a priest who's mute. A priest who can't comprehend what God is doing. How many of you realize organized religion can often get in God's way? Would you be willing to raise your hand if you get, and tell me you're awake this morning? Do you realize organized religion can get in God's way? Are we preaching now? Some of us really know this. We know the pain of this. And so Luke opens his gospel by saying the priest wasn't tuned in with what God is doing. The religious establishment wasn't really speaking for God. So many people in our culture feel that way. God can't get in the front door. So in this story, it's like God smashes in the side window. And he just breaks in and does something amazing and special, circumventing, in a sense, the organized religion. Maybe that's happening in our culture as well. Maybe we're a part of something that is growing, where people around the United States, the old ways of thinking that have been handed down to us from our organized religion are not really showing who God is and God's love. And so now God's breaking in the side window to do something special. That's the way Luke opens his gospel. Well, what can we take away from this for our families? First of all, God did not focus in on that mistake that Zechariah made. He was overall a decent guy. He made a mistake, but God didn't focus in on that and write him off for that. God didn't disown Zechariah. God didn't get so frustrated with Zechariah that he wasn't willing to relate with him or as closely with him anymore. God blessed Zechariah and Elizabeth in spite of his imperfection. If you're keeping notes, what can we take away? Perhaps we can give the same grace to our loved ones that we need for ourselves. Imagine if Zechariah would have written down this whole experience because he can't talk, and his wife Elizabeth didn't believe it, and then he condemns her for doubting. How hypocritical would that be? If he were to do that, he wouldn't be offering her the same grace that God offered to them or him, and we wouldn't do this. We would never do that. If God's been so good to us, we wouldn't withhold that grace from other people in our family or our friends, people that we're close to, people in our church family. God's been so forgiving and gracious to us, we would never withhold forgiveness and grace from other people. Oh, wait a minute. We do that all the time, actually. That's probably a daily reality in the human experience. I want to talk about something that has been helpful to me as I've been reflecting on this, and I hope it's helpful to you. It's called the focusing effect. Focusing effect. You can jot that down if you'd like. Focusing effect. It's also called focusing bias or focusing illusion. Human beings have several flaws, several cognitive distortions that we fall prey to, and they're ingrained in us, and they affect our lives in ways we don't always realize. They make us miserable in ways we don't always realize if we don't challenge them. They're cognitive biases, and we have to overcome them. We have to learn how to overcome them if we're going to live a happy, healthy life. Some examples: negativity bias, we talked about last week, where negative emotions affect human beings 3 times as powerfully as positive emotions. Do you remember that? That's a weakness. It's a flaw in the human brain. We're not as happy as we could be because of negativity bias. Confirmation bias, if you've heard of this, means we search for information that supports what we already believe. Have you heard of that? It's just innate in human beings. We look for information that supports what we already believe. It's a flaw. If you've ever been a part of a board, or some kind of decision-making group, these can derail a company. They're flaws that can be fatal in human beings. We're egocentric. It's also called illusion of control. We assume events are related to us that actually have nothing to do with us. And we assume that we can be in control of things that we can't. It also comes back in the form of superstition. My grandma lived an amazing life following Jesus. Later in her life, she thought that God was being mean to her because she committed some sins earlier in her life. And it was kind of illusion of control, that because I did this earlier in my life, now I deserve whatever's happening to me. Do you follow what I'm saying? It's a flaw in human beings. Focusing effect or focusing bias is one of those. Here's what it means. Focusing bias occurs when a person places too much emphasis on one characteristic to the neglect of others. It means we focus in on one thing because we have the most information about that thing, or because we have the most emotion around that thing. We focus in on one thing to the neglect of other information. It can be horrible for decision making, but it can also lead us to believe that the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, even if it's not. Imagine how that affects families. So if you have somebody in your family, or child, spouse, extended family member, sibling, close friend of yours, and they have a lot of great qualities, but there's something about them that starts to bother you, you can focus in on that one thing. Do you know what I'm talking about? And you can start to see that one flaw in them more powerfully than you see all of their great qualities. Focusing effect. So here's an example of how focusing bias can really, really harm somebody's relationship. Let's say there's a married man, and he has a list of 10 qualities that make the perfect wife. And he's married to a woman who has 9 of them. He's batting 900 here, right? She has 90% of the qualities that he considers ideal in the perfect wife. His wife has 9 out of 10 of those qualities. What happens? Because he's a human being, and the cognitive distortion of focusing affects. What happens? There's one quality she doesn't have. And this is how this can work. He has coworkers, friends, and he notices whenever there's another woman who has that one quality his wife doesn't have. She has 9 out of 10. But focusing effect takes place. And he focuses in on that one quality that she doesn't have, and he wished she had. And he'll start to see that quality in other women. Happens all the time. You could call this the affair effect as well. That's how it happens. He married this woman, oh, she's so great. She has 9 out of 10, which is amazing. And dance with the one who brung you. If you've got 9 out of 10, stick with that person. But he focused in, because of focusing effect, on the one quality she didn't have. And now he's starting to see that one quality in other women. Maybe he takes it a step further, and he actually has an affair, because he saw this one quality in the other woman. Folks, this happens. I'm a pastor, and I hear people's stories they won't tell anybody else. This happens. His marriage is ruined because his wife's discovered it. So he hooks up with the other woman, And over time, once the shine wears off, he realizes she has like 6 out of 10 of the qualities that he thought made up the ideal. This happens, folks. She has like 6 out of 10. He just left a woman who had 9 out of 10, and now he's with a woman who has 6 out of 10. That's a bad purchase. Because of focusing effect, he focused in on the one trait he thought his wife didn't have. He even convinced himself, as all this was happening, that this one thing is way more important to him than he ever thought it would be. Had he known how important this one trait was to him, he would have never married his wife in the first place. That's not true. He married her for a reason. It wasn't a big deal back then, but it's become a bigger deal to him now because of focusing effect. It's a cognitive distortion ingrained in the human brain. And it ruins relationships. Even if it doesn't ruin them, it can create frustration with family members that we love because we have this ideal, and maybe they're lacking like one quality that we consider ideal, but we focus in on that, and the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, and it can lead to frustration. It can lead to distance in a relationship because this person's not living up. This person's just not good enough in my eyes for some reason. It's because of focusing effect. How many of us realize the grass is always greener where it's watered? When we take care of a relationship and we show love and tenderness, that's where the grass is greenest. And we combat focusing effect quickly, and then we're going to move on. I want to show you how to protect our loved ones from focusing effect, focusing bias. It's very easy to do. It's a very easy technique. Just like last week, the 3 blessings. Extremely easy to do. It's just that it's not natural for humans. And so it takes a lot of effort for us to protect our loved ones from our own focusing bias. But here's what you do. Number 1, it's on the next slide. Think of the person who frustrates you. Even if you feel guilty thinking about it, even if it's hard for you to admit that person frustrates you. It could be a child who's giving you a hard time. And it's just hard for you to admit it, that the child's frustrating you. Think about that person, whoever it is. Number 2 is something that a significant portion of people are not willing to do. Because focusing effect can cause us to view people as enemies. It can bring distance where there really didn't have to be any. It's so simple, isn't it? So simple. But it can be so emotionally hard to do. Write down every positive quality in the person you can think of. Who is that person? Write down every positive quality in the person you can think of. Can you see how this protects your family member against focusing effect, because now you're focusing on the positive qualities they have. And then every time you're frustrated, you read the list. It sounds so incredibly simple, and it's so emotionally hard to do. I guarantee you there are a lot of people who look at that, oh my gosh, Ryan, that's so simple, that would never work. They just won't do it. And later today, focusing effect will take hold with a family member or a friend. It's so easy to challenge focusing bias, at least in the steps, but it's so emotionally hard to do, but we have to do it in order to protect our relationships. Now, there is a time when the person really is encroaching on our boundaries, there really is a problem, and there's a time to talk about that. And we're going to cover that in this series, setting boundaries and conflict resolution and reconciliation if possible. We're going to go to all those places, but if the distance in the relationship or the frustration just comes from focusing bias, here's a way to protect your loved one from focusing bias. All right, moving on. For Zechariah and Elizabeth, John, their baby John, was a gift from God to them. They doubted it at first, didn't think it would ever happen, but they were blessed with this child who was a gift from God. Perhaps as we relate with a family that's not perfect, we can view our loved ones as a gift to you from God. When you're tempted to be disappointed with a loved one, tempted to be frustrated. I'm not talking about abuse. I'm not talking about mistreatment. If you're being abused, you and the kids get out. It's probably not going to get better. Truth is, you need to get out and get to a safe place. I'm not talking about abuse and mistreatment. I'm talking about the normal frustration of family relationships. And busyness and distraction and focusing effect take over, and they drive a wedge between us and people we love. They just create some kind of frustration or distance or disappointment. What if we view your loved ones as a gift to you from God? About a year after we were married, Hannah and I went to see the movie Up. Disney's Up. And, at this point in my life, I was used to being a single guy with no kids. And I thought, animated movie, whatever, it's a cartoon. And Little did I know the emotional onslaught I was about to undergo watching the movie Up. Oh, my word. And in the beginning, the movie's cute, but there's this scene, and anybody who's seen it, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. There's this montage where Carl and his late wife Ellie, they were main characters, Carl and Ellie and Russell, but Carl picks up a picture of he and his late wife Ellie, and he remembers back over their lives, and there's this beautiful montage, lasts about 5 minutes, as we're seeing Carl and Ellie's marriage, and I just watched that. It took me completely by shock. I've got a picture that fits my experience of that montage. Admit it, you cried like a baby. That was my experience when I saw this. Like, oh my word, one of the best 5 minutes, I think, in movie history. And so I'm actually going to play this montage from Up. And think as we watch this scene from Up, think about what this might say to us about viewing our family members as a gift from God while we have them. Let's watch Up. It's an animated movie. And we see their lowest lows of grief. We experience their highest highs of joy. My word, when she's sitting in the lawn, sitting on the lawn in that chair, oh my word. And we can see our own life experience in a little animated movie like that. You can clearly see that as Carl looks back over his life, he sees how his wife Ellie was a gift to him. And as I watch this again, I was thinking, there's so many things in life that cause frustration, annoyance, and then coupled with focusing effect, and if a family member, whatever the relationship is, we have expectations and they're not quite living up to that, and we're frustrated. There's so many little things that can play into that as well, work stress and just petty things, annoyances. Made me think, if at the end of your life, if a montage was created about your life, would the things that stress you and annoy you and frustrate you even be a big enough deal to make it into the montage? You know what I mean? Because these are the big events of life. If you've got 5 minutes, only the big things count. I can think of so many things, just annoyances, petty things, little stressors, that can actually lead to frustration in my relationships, but they're not. They're just so small, they wouldn't even make it into the montage. And right now, I can have the reminder to view my loved ones as a gift from God. All right, there's a couple. Well, actually, one more picture I want to show you, just to prove. There's a real-life Carl in existence. I want to show you this. There's a real-life Carl. Isn't that amazing? Imagine his surprise when he saw the movie Up. So there's a couple in our church I want to interview named Pete and Anita. Come on up, Pete and Anita. I'm going to give you a proper introduction. Pete and Anita have been around one church for about a year, and I dearly love them. And I'm going to walk over here and grab a second mic for you. Pete and Anita have been hosting the one group that I lead on Thursday nights, and I've gotten to know them and love them, and you will too. Come on over, sit. Maybe Anita, how about you right here? Yeah, here's your microphone, Anita, and Pete, you come right on over. And I remember the first time I had lunch with Pete and Anita, I realized they're just way cooler than I am. And you're about to experience why. They're already up here, but can we welcome Pete and Anita? Appreciate you being willing to do this. And I want them, first of all, to hear what you've done in your careers, because you've both had very interesting careers. And thank you for letting me twist your arm and get you up here to do this, because they were a little reluctant at first, but they have stories to tell. Can you talk about what did you do in your careers?
My former husband, who passed away from cancer a number of years ago, and I had our own business. We were a provider of continuing medical education, and that business took us essentially all over the world, and we are both divers, scuba divers, and that business was a tremendous gift because we were able to make a little bit of money doing what we loved the most, traveling, being with people, diving, and getting underwater pictures published.
So
it was a very rich life.
So we have scuba divers and underwater photographers.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Pete, how about you?
My former wife and myself had a long history in music education, and I was a professor at Northern Arizona University for 22 years. My former wife and I were married for 40 years, and I just retired from NAU in Flagstaff in 2006, so I've been in the Valley since 2006.
So we have a professional musician and a scuba diver. Like, I'm just not cool enough to compete with that. You know, I realized that as soon as we had lunch. So you're a couple who obviously loves each other deeply. And I've seen your interaction in our one group. And I promise you, this is one of the most in love couples you're going to meet. All right? And just the way you look at each other, the way you support each other in your sharing in your one group. It gets a little sappy at times, right? No, it's just super romantic. I just love seeing how you interact. And you obviously, you view each other as a gift to one another. So how long have you been married, and how did you meet?
It'll be 7 years in March that we've been married. 8?
It'll be 8 years.
We can edit that out. Don't worry about it. So 8 years in March.
8 years in March.
Okay.
We both loved our former spouses tremendously. We never thought we would find love again. We simply wanted to have a friend, companion. I wanted to go to Spurs games because I was in San Antonio, and he wanted to go to Diamondback games, and neither one of us had anyone special to do that with, or to go to the theater with, or to talk about the book I just read. So we met on eHarmony. It works.
And you should be a commercial for eHarmony. They're going to see this and find out. Yeah.
I say that it works if you do it correctly, and if you do it well. It takes a certain amount. We actually knew each other, with our real brain before we actually had met face to face. We knew a lot about each other,
right,
and really wanted to meet.
Yeah. Well, you certainly you love each other very much. And you've also faced some adversity. Getting to know you and hear you sharing in the one group has been touching. I remember, Anita, you were the first person to share on the very first night of our one group. I don't even remember that. And you basically set the tone for a level of honesty and love and safety in our one group from sharing your story. I took note of that, and I think it's made a great difference in our one group. But what kind of adversity have you faced in your families, even before you've met each other?
Okay, I actually came from a very loving family, and I have an older sister, and then I'm the second one. Then I have a younger sister and a younger brother, so I'm second in line. My older sister, first of all, my folks were the first generation of immigrants. My grandparents came over from Italy, and my older sister, they had very high expectations, especially of my older sister and myself, and I thought it was one of the things that sticks out in my memory is that they expected us to marry, of course, another Italian, so and which they had their prejudices, of course, and I actually was the only one that fulfilled that expectation of all four of us, but my older sister was given a tremendous amount of grief because she happened to marry somebody who wasn't an Italian. And then what was really funny was my younger sister didn't get married till she was in her early 30s, I think, or late 20s. And by the time she got married, it was okay for her to marry somebody that wasn't Italian. And also, she got married outside of the Catholic Church, and it was quite okay by then. So my parents really relaxed their expectations by that
Right.
time.
So the standards for you got relaxed by the younger
That's
sibling,
right.
yeah.
That's
yeah.
right.
Well, and of course you were married for years,
40 years.
40 years, and lost your wife.
Yes.
Yes.
Of cancer also.
Yeah. And then, thank you, Pete. And then Anita, would you like to share a little bit about the adversity you faced in your family along these years?
I grew up in the Navy with a father who was deployed a lot, and that was very hard for our family. From the age of about 6 until I was a sophomore in high school, he was never home for more than 6 months at a time, and he was usually gone from a year to 2 years, sometimes almost 3 years. I had a wonderful mother who was very, very talented and loved everyone in the world except me. And that was very, very hard for me. And I essentially grew up with a very, very low self-esteem, very quiet, very shy, very difficult for me to make conversation. So to end up having a business that took me around the world and greeting strangers all the time and making them feel like they were a guest in my home, not just another guest at a hotel, was a very remarkable feat for me. When my husband died, that was very, very hard for me. We were essentially joined at the hip. We worked together for almost 30 years, and we still liked each other. We even loved each other. And our business between us, we had 4 boys from previous marriages. So our business was our child together. And when he died and I was carrying on, it was like I had to learn to walk without a hip. And I was a very, very rough time. Thankfully, I had strong faith. I had a lot of good friends, and God saw me through that and showed me that I had a 28-year gift that was very, very wonderful and very rare. And like I said, I didn't think it would ever happen again, and it did. And I think that because between the two of us, we have about 75 years of marriage. I think that helps us to be happy because we have learned conflict resolution and moderation and just how to live together well.
Yeah.
Last year, probably the worst thing that ever happened in my life.
It's all right.
My 44-year-old son committed suicide. He had struggled with alcohol all of his adult life, having started experimenting with drugs and alcohol as a teenager. And sadly, the demons of alcohol overtook him. I can say that there is nothing worse than losing a child. Your parents, your friends, your husband, your spouse are all sad tragedies, and there's always a lot of grief entailed. But losing your own child, especially the way I did, has been extremely difficult. And I don't think that I could survive it without this gift that's sitting next to me, because he has really been my rock and helped me so much. And I just would like to say one more thing. As sad and tragic and grief-stricken I have been about my son, I can take joy in one thing, and that is the demons are not any longer there.
Yeah. Thank you, Anita, for sharing that. It's extremely difficult to share, and your honesty in the one group took us to a whole new level, and I guarantee you that's life-giving to a lot of people who hear that today. And so how do you support each other? Last question. How do you support each other after all the experiences you've had? You see the body language between the two of them? Just the love that's there. How do you offer each other support? It just comes naturally, Pete. Right?
It does come naturally. We do everything together.
Yeah.
We're very boring.
Oh, I don't know about that.
And we do everything together because we really like each other.
Yeah.
And we like sharing things. And when my son, when that policeman came to the door, I'm just so grateful to God for Pete and his love and his patience and understanding when I get real gritchy, because I can.
What was that word? I didn't quite pick up on that. Yeah, okay.
And I just try very hard to do it in private.
Yeah.
But I can be that. And he loves me unconditionally and is there for me. And he brings me coffee every morning, and he makes me breakfast every morning.
In her favorite cup.
Oh, my word. Pete, you're setting the standards too high, my friend. Well, you're so in love. You're such a gift to our group, to our church, to me personally. And I want to thank you for being willing to share this today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Can we thank Pete and Anita? Perfect. Great job. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, as we begin the series and the hectic hustle and bustle of the Christmas season, we can choose to give grace to those who are closest to us, the same grace that we need. And we can choose to combat focusing effect, and we can choose to see your life and your loved ones, family, friends as gifts from God. Will you pray with me?